Let's take a moment and talk about the level blueprint. Now, I've created a new level, and this level is just one of the default levels that's created when you create a new level. It's called the VR basic level, but it's really just kind of an interesting level with some nice metallic wall materials and some static meshes that, if we take a look at these static meshes, they're all cubes and cones and triangles and spheres that have their physics enabled. Now, what we're going to do with these actors is we're going to duplicate them and make a nice pile of them in the center of this room here. So here in the world outliner, I will select all of the cubes, and I'll select also the pyramid, and I think the ball is also selected. And why don't we make a duplicate of them by hitting my W key to transform and holding down the Alt key and just making a duplicate of them by dragging them up a little bit. And why don't we rotate them just a touch and hitting the W key again and dragging up another copy of them and rotating them in the other direction just a touch. And since they are all physics actors, they all have their physics enabled, I can go back in my world outliner and select all of them again, so they're all in my selection. Selecting also my little pyramid shapes and coming up to the play, and instead of hitting play, I'm going to hit simulate, and you'll see what happens. They all kind of fall into a pile and crumble down. They just kind of become a cool shape. Now you'll notice that if I hit stop, they kind of all go back to where they were, and that's not what I want. What I want is just to create a big pile of cool stuff. So let's go back and take the balls all the way down to the cubes, select them all again, and once again, Control, select all the pyramids, and once again, hit simulate. Let them all come to a rest. Let's leave that pile there. And if I want them to stay in this position, I can just hit K on my keyboard, and you'll see that all the actors' final resting position will be stored there. So I can hit stop now, and instead of them going back to their original position where I moved them to, they're now sitting here and can come to rest at this position. They're all still physics actors. If I select them, you'll see that physics simulation is still enabled for all of them. Great. Now let's come over here to our modes panel and find a radial force. And I just start typing rad and I get radial force, and I'll move that to the center of my level, and I'll change the radius to encompass mostly the entire room. And I'm also going to tick the box here in the impulse section, impulse velocity change, and I'll change the impulse strength to something like 3,500. All right. That's good so far. Let's just add one more thing for now. I'll come down here to my content folder, and I see that I have a mannequin folder. Let's grab in the mannequin folder, in the character folder, in the mesh folder, the physics asset, which is basically a representation of my mannequin character. If I hit escape, you'll see that there he is, just sitting in the space. Now, you'll notice also that my player start is kind of in the middle of that mess, and I kind of want to get my player start out of there. So I'll hit the W key, and I'll move my player start back into the corner here, so that when I now switch from simulate to play in viewport, I can sort of look at my entire scene. And you can see that my physics asset now just crumples to the ground. All right, I think I have my stage set. It's a good time to save. Click up here on the Save Current Level, and it'll give me an opportunity to save. I might create a Maps folder, and I'll call this My New Boom Map, and I'll put it inside of my Maps folder. Now, basically what I want to do is I want to fire an impulse and activate that radial force. And I can do that a variety of different ways, but that radial force is sitting inside the level. Now, there are many different ways to access your blueprints. But there is one very special blueprint, which is called a level blueprint, which lives inside of this level. And one of the distinctions about that blueprint, it is aware of all the different things inside of this level. And it can do something that actor class blueprints cannot do. It can actually reach in and talk to the things in this level. Now we access this particular blueprint in one specific place, which is here in the blueprints drop down from our toolbar. And if I click on it, you'll see I can open the level blueprint here. So I'll open the level blueprint, and it gives me access to the level blueprint here. And it gives me a couple of default nodes that I can use. I can use the begin play or the tick node. I don't really need those, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of them for now. But what I do want is I want to access that radial force that I placed in my level. So I can go and select it. I can select it either here in the level, or I can select it from my world outliner here. And with it selected in the level blueprint, I can now right-click. And you can see that in the very top section here, it says, what would you like to do? Would you like to create a reference to this radial force? And I can say, yes, create a reference to this radial force. And with this radial force selected, I can drag out from it, and I can type in impulse, or let's see, fire. Actually, what I need to do is actually get the component for it. And if I look at the very bottom here, I get the actual radial force component. And the component is actually the element that is firing. So I can see that right here with it selected, that I've got the radial force and I've got the force component. So I want to talk to this component. And with the component selected, now I can fire an impulse. Now I can fire an impulse based on a variety of different inputs, but I'm just going to hard code this input. And if I right-click and hit the 1 key on my keyboard, you can see that I can bind that to the 1 key on my keyboard here. And it gives me immediate access to the 1 key, press and release. So let's connect the 1 key, the pressing of the 1 key, to the firing of the impulse and hit compile. And now, the one other thing that I want to do is I want to take my skeletal mesh physics asset, and I want to roll down to the collision, and I want to generate an overlap event, which we're going to use in a few minutes, and save the level. And now let's push play. Now everything collapses, and if I hit the 1 key, wow, I get a nice explosion. Bang, everything's flying around. And there's my character, and you can see that he gets banged around every time I hit the 1 key. And all my content's kind of flying all over the place. Cool. So my level blueprint is talking to my level. Let's hit the 1 key again. When I push play, bang. Now it's a little exciting, but it could be more exciting. Let's go back into my blueprint here. And after I fire the impulse, let's also type in emitter. Let's emit or spawn an emitter at location. And because I have my starter content loaded here, you can see that I've got starter content. One of the pieces of starter content is a particle system called an explosion. So I can select it here in the emitter templates. And the one piece of information that it needs right away is where that emitter should spawn. Now I can get that information here from the radial force component. So I can drag out and say get world location, and I can feed that to the location. So let's compile that. And now when I push play and hit the 1 key, you see I get a nice little explosion there in the center. And that's kind of fun. Let's do a little bit of something here. Let's scale this up. And this isn't always a good idea, but just for the sake of making it a little bit more visually interesting, let's scale that particle system up to 2.5. Sometimes particle systems like this don't scale well, but let's give it a shot and see how it works in this level. Push play again, hit the 1 key. And this one seems to scale reasonably okay without my particle sprites going too crazy. You can see my guy likes to dance every time I fire the explosion. Let's do one more thing here with this explosion. We can also spawn or play a sound. Let's see whether it's play sound or spawn a sound. Yeah, let's play sound at location. And it's going to say, well, what sound do you want to play? And fortunately, because we have a sound particle system, we also have an explosion sound actor that can be spawned. And it's going to ask for location as well. And I can drag out from the location that I used to spawn my particle system and drag it into the location as well. Now you can see that this wire kind of crosses over that node. And you can always create a reroute node in any blueprint by double-clicking on the wire, and that will create a little node that you can drag out to tidy up your blueprints a little bit. So let's try that now and see how that works. I can push play. Now, one of the things that's really cool about blueprints is that if I minimize this a little bit into the corner, We can watch it all simulate as I push play. Cool.